Hey, which one you want to wear today?
That one.
Okay. It's Science Day today?
Yeah, it is.
You guys still collecting rocks?
Yeah, we still are. Now we're naming them.
You're naming the rocks?
Yeah.
Wow. What are some of their names?
One is named Jane. The other one's named George.
You know what would be a good name for a rock?
What?
Rocco. The Rock.
Do that.
Yeah. You look good. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they are right. Sending your kids off to public school really shouldn't be anyone's morning routine.
Yeah, I know, right? You know what's even worse, though?
What?
That poor little girl's dad's scaring her with that bulletproof vest, but just getting on that bus is 27 times more dangerous than going to school without it would be.
According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, between 2007 and 2016, 1,282 people were killed in school transportation-related crashes. According to a database compiled by Mother Jones, that's 3.4 times more than the 378 people who died in mass shootings with 3 or more casualties. Now, mind you, that's all mass shootings, not just the ones that happened at schools. If we only look at the mass shootings that happened at K-12 schools, that number drops to just 33. But even if we count shootings that weren't necessarily mass shootings, there were still only 47 people murdered at school in that entire decade, 26 of whom were killed in a single shooting, the Sandy Hook Massacre in Newtown, Connecticut. That particular tragedy unfolded over 6 long, terrible minutes before men with guns arrived and the shooter killed himself. And yet the anti-gun left expects me to believe that a moderately well-trained teacher with a handgun and the significant tactical advantage of knowing the terrain, having a sound to move towards, and being on the hunt couldn't have stopped it a whole lot sooner? If you believe that, I guess you've never heard of Jack Wilson. Now, that figure about 47 people being murdered at school over the course of a decade isn't going up either. The decade from 1995 to 2004 saw 54 people murdered at school. That's 15% more fatal school shootings, despite America's population being 9% lower back then. And if you're wondering why I picked the seemingly random years of 1995 to 2004, it's not to pull some kind of statistical trickery on you. It's because those were the years that the Clinton assault weapons ban was in effect. A time when Americans only owned around 1 million assault weapons. Not the decade where the ban was long over, the AR-15 became the most popular rifle in the country, and Americans purchased a whopping 15+ million assault weapons. But you know what? Let's put all that aside. All this ad shows is a little girl putting on a bulletproof vest and hopping on a school bus. So let's look at the most specific comparable numbers. Let's take the 1,282 people killed in school transportation-related crashes and set aside the 1,001 who weren't actually school-aged children. Now let's set aside the 116 children who are occupants of other vehicles, as well as the 98 who were pedestrians, the 8 who were on bikes, and any other children who died who weren't literally riding a school bus when they were killed. That leaves us with just 58 students killed while riding the bus between 2007 and 2016. In the same time period, 38 K-12 students were murdered at school with guns. That's a huge difference. In absolute numbers alone, riding a school bus is more than 50% more likely to kill your child than a school shooting is. But not every student actually rides the bus, so that's probably something we should take into account. I mean, just because some desolate stretch of road in eastern Oregon sees fewer fatalities every year than a bustling freeway, that doesn't necessarily mean it's safer. To really quantify that, we need to come up with a more informative metric. What we need to figure out is the rate at which these deaths are occurring, not just the overall number. See, in any given year, there's around twice as many law enforcement officers killed on the job as there are loggers killed on the job. And yet, logging is consistently ranked the #1 most dangerous job in the country, while being a cop doesn't even crack the top 10. That's because there's something like 850,000 cops in America, but only around 50,000 loggers. Likewise, there are only about 26 million K-12 students who ride a bus to school in America, out of a total of around 56.6 million students. all 56.6 million of whom, it must be noted, could theoretically be the victim of a school shooting someday. That means that students who ride the bus are about 3.3 times more likely to die riding that bus than they are to die in a school shooting. But that's still not the whole story. To use another dangerous job analogy, truck driver makes the list of the top 10 most dangerous jobs every year simply because the more time you spend on the road, the more likely you are to be killed in a car accident.
You just cured anxiety. Oh my god!
Point being, we need to factor in how long kids are actually riding the bus. According to the American School Bus Council, the average bus ride for a K-12 student is 24 minutes one way. That means that America's 26 million school bus riding children spend a collective 20.8 million man-hours a day riding the bus. Over the course of a decade, that means that bus riding fatalities among K-12 students occur at a rate of about 1 death per every 646 million hours of ride time. On the other hand, the average American school day is about 6.5 hours long, and a school shooting could of course happen at any time throughout the school day. Multiply that 6.5-hour school day by 56.6 million students, and what you'll find is that American K-12 students spend a collective 368 million hours a day at school. What this means is that over the course of 10 180-day school years, there's only one school shooting death for every 17.4 billion educational man-hours. That means that every single minute that your child spends riding the bus is 27 times more likely to be their last than any given minute at school is. Truly, the simple act of riding a school bus is 27 times more dangerous than the risk of a mass shooting is. But you know what? Your child shouldn't be afraid to ride the bus, because school buses are ridiculously safe. Riding a school bus is probably the single safest form of transportation on the road. According to the aforementioned NHTSA, students are about 70 times more likely to get to school safely when taking a bus instead of traveling by car. Can you imagine how utterly psychotic you'd have to be to make your child afraid to ride the school bus? So then, why are you encouraging your children to be afraid of dying in a school shooting? It's just not a very realistic fear. They don't happen often at all. You only think that they do because the media won't stop turning every single one into a circus, and politicians won't stop using them to promote their gun control agendas. That same decade that saw 38 K-12 students murdered in school shootings saw 40,000 die in car accidents and 35,000 kill themselves. Even childhood cancer, something that you couldn't have less control over and can strike anyone, is more worth worrying about than school shootings, seeing as how it claimed 14,000 children in the same time that school shootings claimed 38. I'm sure this will come as a surprise to no one watching this video, but I'm the kind of guy who carries a gun at all times. My children are aware of this, and it makes them feel safe knowing that Dad is always ready to protect them should the need arise. But I'd have to be pretty psychotic to encourage them to be afraid when I'm not around, wouldn't I? Of course I would. Which is funny, because, hey kids, you're going to the grocery store with Mom. Your only defense for the next 3 hours is an unarmed 110-pound woman, not the grown-ass man with a gun that you're used to having around, is probably a much more justified reason for a child to be afraid than the 1 in 1.5 million chance that they'll be gunned down at school over the course of their K-12 education is. It is cruel to make your children unrealistically fearful. And yet, when it comes to the gun control debate, that's exactly what liberals are constantly doing.
I definitely don't feel safe at schools right now.
School shootings have kind of just been a lot this year.
Perhaps I'm just telling myself I'm safe because I want to be.
I sit in school in fear because of the status quo.
I haven't felt safe since Sandy Hook happened, and I was only in like 6th grade back then, and I just haven't really felt safe. I've always had some kind of anxiety going into school.
Maybe this is a real possibility. Like, this is something that could happen to me.
From family members,
I'm here because my granddaughter's 9 years old and she's afraid to go to school.
To politicians.
You know, the single greatest concern, Generation Z they call it, 7 to 17 years old, you know the single greatest concern they have? Getting shot in school. Every single day in America, there's a mass shooting that occurs on our streets in our cities.
To teachers?
It is ridiculous that we have to talk to our students about what might happen. That it's a realistic fear that somebody might come into our school, which should be a place of safety and learning and curiosity and friendship and figuring things out about life, and that we have to tell them what might happen if somebody comes in with an assault rifle.
To freaking Taylor Swift!
So every day now you brace for the sound you've only heard on TV. You go to class scared, wondering where the best hiding spot would be.
The left is absolutely obsessed with terrifying children in their quest to ban guns. And that in and of itself would be despicable. But the fact that they're doing it and exploiting these children in their attempts to deprive me and tens of millions of other law-abiding, peaceful Americans of their rights just makes it even worse. Terrifying children to further your agenda of creating even more victimless crimes in a country that already has an obscenely high prison population does not give you the moral high ground. No matter how many times you try to tell yourself otherwise, this is not about saving kids. It's about power. It's about control. It's about getting the vote of the overly emotional and maybe depriving a few of us of the weapons that could help us stay free in the process. But I have news for you. The cat is already out of the bag. There are more guns in America than there are people. Every estimate you've ever seen of how many guns are in civilian hands is probably far, far lower than the real number. You're never going to turn us into Australia or the UK. You wieners can't even get guns from New Zealand. You really think you're going to stop tens of millions of people like me from owning whatever guns we please? I don't think so. So instead of spending so much time making your children terrified of something that is rare to the point of statistical irrelevance, why don't you do something productive with them? Go outside, watch a movie, read a book, take a hike, maybe even take them shooting guns. It's a lot of fun.
When I shoot, I think it's so much fun than playing with anything else that's in my room.
You take your kids, they'll love it. I promise. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you really enjoyed the video. I want to let you know that a project that I am going to be working on called Red Flag Reality is in its last week of fundraising, and I would really encourage you to go check out the Indiegogo page for it. It's a really cool project that's going to expose the kind of unseen dangers of red flag laws that a lot of people, even a lot of ostensibly pro-gun people, don't seem to realize are there. And great news, if you go make a donation this week, the Firearms Policy Coalition will be matching donations up to $15,000. So your money can go twice as far. It's going to be a really cool project. It's going to be really well made. And I think it's going to make a real impact, especially as we go into election season. So please, please, please go check that out and share this video and share that campaign with your friends. Thank you so much. Take care.